Thank you for joining me today. I'm Madeline Blair, and this is Unlocked, a show all about opening possibilities so that when life asks you to make a decision, you've got options. Today, we are going to be talking about coaching from a unique perspective. Now, for all those coaches out there, how many of you have coached people in the U.S. federal government? Now, we're talking with someone today who not only does that, she has pioneered in the arena and does so successfully. Now, in addition, as always, I'll be sharing lessons learned from a book that had a great impact on my life and my work. That's at the end, after we've talked with my guests. And after a short message, we'll meet our guest, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Unlocked. Today, we're talking about coaching, and not just any coaching. We're talking about coaching in the federal government, and my guest is Lynne Feingold. She is a facilitator and storyteller who brings a passion to organization and workforce development that engages, embraces, and inspires leaders at all levels. She's a dedicated lifelong learner, certified in multiple coaching models. Lynne is passionate about elevating the coaching profession and making coaching and peer learning accessible and impactful for diverse audiences. She's also a co-author of the Complete Job and Career Handbook, 101 Ways to Get From Here to There. Lynne pioneered the first government-wide coaching cadre across defense and civilian agencies and co-founded the government-wide coaching consortium known today as the Federal Coaching Network. Lynne has coached across 20 agencies. Lynne Feingold, welcome to Unlocked.
Thank you, Madeline. I'm delighted and honored to be on your program.
Oh, it's great to have you. Great to have you.
Thank you.
I have to begin at the beginning because everybody thinks they know what a coach is about. Why don't we talk a little bit about how you define coaching and how do you distinguish that from mentors, therapists, friends, consultants?
Wonderful question, Madeline. I am so glad you started the program with that because you're right. A lot of people confuse them. So coaching is about opening possibilities, which I know you're all about. And I love to use a visual. Somebody might come to coaching like this, and they see out of one eye and they go, wow. And then with great coaching, all of a sudden they go, oh my gosh, I didn't know there were more perspectives. I had no idea I was only looking from one lens. So I'd love to pretend that you're coming to me, Madeline.
Okay.
Because you're back in an organization and you don't like your boss. Are you game for this?
Absolutely.
Okay. So if I am a friend and you come to me and you go, oh, Lynne, I just cannot stand my boss. As a friend, I'll say, oh, Madeline, you poor thing. I feel so badly for you. If I had a boss like what you've described, I'd either gain 100 pounds or I'd stop eating altogether. It's terrible what you're going through, and I want to help you so much. I just don't know how. So, Madeline, what did you hear in that as a friend?
Well, I heard some empathy.
Mm-hmm.
I heard some frustration because they couldn't help me. I also heard somebody who really understood when she said, I'll either gain 100 pounds or I'll eat nothing.
Right. We've all been there, right? So I love what you said, Madeline. It's true. Friends show empathy and they take your side.
Yeah.
Even if you're not right, friends want to take your side. Perfect. Okay, let's look at a consultant. Okay, Madeline, you come to me, you say what? I can't stand. I don't like my boss, right? Now, Madeline, we interviewed 105 people who in some way report to this person directly or indirectly, and across the board, there wasn't anything positive. We have come up with strategies that we think if you handle this way that we're recommending, the solution, there will be a solution and the problem will be solved. So we have written a 10-page report of our observations and our recommendations. What did you hear from a consultant?
Well, I did hear some due diligence,
Good.
and I hope they did that well, because interviewing with 100 people is a big deal. Have done that in the past.
I know you have.
I can't imagine how many people I've interviewed over the years.
Thousands,
And
I'm sure.
could be. And, you do get a good sense of an individual. But then I also heard that I've got to read 10 pages to figure out what I have to do. Now, 10 pages, maybe some of that is analysis of what they've learned. But gosh, I want to know what I have to do now.
You want immediate help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that. So we like to say consultants tell you what to do. They analyze the situation, just like you said, they come up with reports, but it's about here's how we see your problem after interviewing, and here's what we're recommending. So it's the consultant is telling you what their opinion is,
Yes.
what you need to do. Great.
Yes.
So now, Madeline, come to me and I'm going to be a mentor to you. So tell me in some feeling that you just can't stand your boss. Let me hear it.
Well, it annoys me so much that my boss never asks me what I was trying to accomplish, why I went a different path than what was normal, even though the results were good. So I just don't quite understand why this person doesn't. They somehow focus on how I got there instead of what I actually produced.
Yeah. So as your mentor, Madeline, listen, let me give you some advice. I've been where you are. Not once, not twice, at least 10 times in my whole career. And I get it. It's like they want to tell you how. It's not the what that was so brilliant. Listen, take my advice. Just get out. Don't try to make the person what they're not. I'm telling you, this is my advice from all the experience that I've had. So, just don't waste your time. Get out and get the right kind of boss for you.
Wow. That's scary.
In what way?
Well, it means I have to leave my 6-figure job, and who knows what I'm going to find afterwards.
So what did you notice the mentor does?
There was an acknowledgement. There could be some empathy in there. But what I sensed rather, was that this particular mentor said, look, there's only one solution. Go do it. So in other words, they narrowed the field a great deal before they even gave me advice. And it's sort of like, this is what they would do in this situation.
Great, Madeline. You heard that perfectly. Mentors tell you what to do based on what's worked for them. It's their experience. Beautiful. So we've looked at friendship. We've looked at consulting. We've looked at mentoring. Do you want to look at therapists? What do therapists do?
Sure.
Right. So Madeline, come to me and tell me how much I'm your therapist now, and tell me, you just can't stand your boss, right?
I really can't. I mean, every time I go in there, he has some niggling point. I mean, oftentimes I end up, in tears in my eyes as I'm leaving his office because I'm just so frustrated and I can't argue with him.
Yeah, you can't argue with him. And you just feel so unheard, right? So unheard.
Yes.
So, as your therapist, let me ask you, Madeline, who does this person remind you of from your past? And how does this person make you feel? I know it's frustrating, but let's look at your past a little bit and see if
Okay.
we can
Well,
identify.
all right. It was Jake. I mean, every time I talked to Jake, he shut me down every
Mhm,
time.
mhm,
And I have feelings. I was real frustrated, just really frustrated and
mm,
weak. It made me feel weak.
mhm. Yes. So what did you hear? What did therapists typically do? I mean, this is a generalization, it's kind of a little stereotype, but what what did you hear from a therapist?
Curiosity.
Ah, very good. Curiosity.
And that's about it.
Curiosity. What what I was trying to show is instead of just staying in the present and going future oriented, the therapist looks to heal the past. Who does this remind you from your
Mm,
past?
mhm,
And then they go from the past, hoping to heal it so that you can move forward.
mm. I didn't catch that. Well, I mean, it was sort of like it was the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I saw it, but I was digging more, and I was thinking, yes,
Ah,
that curiosity.
you're
Yeah.
such a good thinker, Madeline. So if let's pretend I'm your coach
Okay.
and you say to me, Lynn, I can't stand my boss.
Yeah. Ugh, awful. He's just
Mad-
awful.
Madeline, what kind of a boss would you like to have?
Ah, good question. I think what I would really like to have is someone who knows that I'm a professional,
Mhm.
and when they give me an objective to achieve,
Mhm.
we discuss the objective, not and
Mm.
the achievement of that, and not all this nitsy stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's what I want.
So with coaching, I wouldn't, a therapist might, a consultant, and even a friend might say, "Well, Madeline, tell me all the reasons you hate your boss." But coaching wants to move the
Move
action
forward.
forward.
Yeah.
What kind of a boss do you like to have? So I just want you to notice what you feel sensation wise, emotion wise. When I say, Madeline, tell me all the reasons you hate your boss, what do you notice right away? Like I notice in myself, I get tight. Just see thinking about all the
Yeah.
reasons I hate.
Yeah.
Okay, you feel that some way in your own being?
Yes, definitely. In fact, I even scrunched down in the chair.
Ah. See? And then when I say, Madeline, tell me what kind of a boss you want to have. What do you notice in sensation
Well,
and
immediately, if you notice, I elevated my head
mhm,
because I was thinking, well, now who is it that I want to, so it was a just entirely different perspective.
mhm. Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So those are some of the differences
Wow.
of how they're all support systems and they all have a place.
Yeah.
And yet they approach the problem very different. And in coaching, we say we don't coach the problem, we coach the person.
Yeah.
So, 10 people could come with the same problem, and how it looks will be different because we're coaching the person.
I love it.
Yeah.
Lynn, I think that has been one of the best conversations I've had around this subject called coaching. So I want to
Wonderful.
thank you.
Thank you for asking. That was a great way to begin
I,
because you're right. So many people, with sports
yeah,
coaches tell people what to do.
they do.
Move your arm a little, move your feet. That is not executive leadership coaching.
Yeah,
So great that you asked. Thank you.
you're welcome. Well, I know that you have been a pioneer in your work in an almost inconceivable idea of the federal government wide coaching. Tell me a little bit, how did you do this and what did you learn from it?
Wow. So, how did I start the
Yeah,
federal coaching movement?
yeah. What stimulated this idea?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question, and I'd like to just share with you the story that inspired me then to go into the government, and that was when I was in 2nd grade. I actually started coaching in 2nd grade.
Mhm.
And can I share with you the story of that?
Of
Because
course, of course.
it is so vivid in my mind, it's like it happened today.
Mm.
So I'm looking, daydreaming out of the window, and Mrs. Matthews, my 2nd grade teacher, comes over to me. "Lynn, what are you doing looking out the window?" "Well, I want everybody to work on a project together." "What kind of project?" "A project where everybody can be their best and everybody's helping everybody to be their best." "Well, Lynn, that's a wonderful goal, but you can't do it here. You'll have to wait until you're an adult." "But I don't want to wait. I want to do it here in this classroom." Dead silence. She doesn't answer. And I remember the feeling, the sensation of, what do you say to an adult that doesn't get something that's so obvious? So I didn't answer, and she didn't offer anything. And I felt unheard. So, Madeline, if you had asked me, when did I start coaching or what inspired me? 5 years ago, I wouldn't have even shared this story. It's only recently that I realized the connection to my professional and government pioneering, because these two things are the links to coaching:
Mm.
bringing out the best in people
Yeah.
and having people help people to be their best. Team performance. So it's individual performance and it's the team performance that coaching is all about.
Mm. That is an insight I've not heard from many other people, that you have to coach in relationship to both the individual and their context.
Mhm. Yeah, because the team is so important. If we can't work with other people,
Mhm.
we're working all alone.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen very often, especially in organizations. We have to be able to work with other people. And more importantly, when we help everyone be their best, we've got like this incredible thing happening. Just an amazing way to bring out the best in everyone. And so I never lost my dream of 2nd grade.
From 2nd grade. It is quite remarkable, isn't it? I mean, that a child would see
Mhm,
that clearly
mhm,
and hold that little seed in them
mhm,
until it was ready. Mm. Well, I know that working in the federal government, well, actually working in any large organization, there are challenges. But what are some of the challenges you've heard? And I want to say, well, no, let's begin with just general challenges. And then
mhm,
I want to focus also on the challenges when you're working with different, I'll call them cohorts.
mhm.
But let's start with the general challenges.
Okay, so the general challenges of starting, of actually pioneering the program.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just share a little bit what happened with the program.
Mhm.
I was working at the Treasury Department's Lifelong Learning Center. It was like the TED Talks of the government.
Mm.
And we brought in Nobel Prize winners and best-selling authors. And what I saw was that the executives got so inspired by these speakers. But I had an inkling they'd go back to the job and they'd be so stressed out they wouldn't be able to apply what they learned in action. And I had a thought that coaching could do that. So, one of the first challenges I had was demand and supply. I was the only coach. So, so,
What a great challenge.
so I started small, maybe
Mhm.
had a handful of executives. And then I said, you know what? I want to do a 6-month pilot. And I thought, well, if we get 5 more people, 10, maybe even 30, this would be great. We put out an announcement, and Madeline, here I would have been grateful for 30. What do you think happened?
I get the impression there was a lot of people.
You are right. In 2 hours, 400 people
Wow.
requested coaching. I almost died. I mean, I was panicked, and the staff nearly pulled their hair out and killed me. They said, "Look what you've done.
Did you
Look what
done?
you've done."
You've raised the expectations.
So necessity is the mother of invention. And I went across the government to defense and civilians, and I said, "I need a cadre of coaches that want to help coach across the government," because the Treasury Executive Institute coached across the government, not
Mhm.
just Treasury. So that was the beginning of what my vision was, a government-wide coaching culture.
Mm.
So I have to share with you honestly that I couldn't give up this vision. Now, visions are lofty. If everybody can see them, they're not visions, they're missions, right?
Mm.
So I didn't know how I was going to do it, and everybody thought I was crazy, to the point that friends and colleagues said, "Lynne, you're just not letting this go. And it sounds like you really think it's possible. Get a therapist." And we know somebody really good. So this is like unimaginable in the government. I mean, the government has a lot of challenges as any big bureaucracy. How do you get people to be their best and have people working together? It's not all the government's fault. You've got change of elections, you've got
Mm.
political things. It's not an easy thing. So that's why people thought, really, if you think this is possible, why don't you just try to do it treasury wide? But government wide? I said, it has to be government wide.
Mm.
It needs to be government wide. So that was another obstacle. People thought I needed a therapist. I was coming up with an idea that was absolutely insane if I thought it could happen. And building a program and having so many people wanting it and having to find ways that people would collaborate. Now, I will tell you, Madeline, one wonderful coach, when I said, "I'd like you to coach people from X agency," and she said, "You want me to coach people that aren't in my agency?" That's how siloed government is. And so that was, you can't coach people in your own agency. They won't feel safe and secure. Let's do it across agencies so people feel safe. That was something that I just wanted. Now I'm sure people are coaching people in their own agency, but in the beginning, I wanted that kind of safety where you wouldn't know anybody. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Lynn, you did something else though in that process. You gave people the opportunity to see other other
Yes,
agencies.
so
So
smart, Madeline.
you were doing a lot of cross learning, which is
Yes,
so powerful in an organization when you can break through those silos.
absolutely. You're so right, Madeline, because the government is very siloed.
Mhm.
I want to believe that the coaching program, we now have thousands of certified coaches. We have our own International Coach Federation certified program,
Wow.
and we have thousands of coaches when we started with just me at the
With
TEI.
one. Well, let me ask some more specific questions
Sure.
because uh, I know that, well, gender has always been an area that I've worked in from, gosh, 25 years ago. I was doing a lot of the landmark work there.
Mhm.
Uh, and yet there are still issues and difficulties and extra challenges that women face. What do you learn and see as you work with women leaders?
Yeah, thank you, Madeline. And I know you've done so much in that area, and I'd love to ask you what you've noticed too. I would say that women feel a lot of gender bias, especially around likability and competence. They
Mm.
feel they have to choose. Like, I'm either competent or I work on being likable, because there's a certain expectation that women will act a certain way. And men, they feel, don't have that. They can be whatever they want because they're, men. Um, the CEOs that I work with in the private sector, they often have worked so hard to get to the very top, the C suite, and they have been highly motivated and they've known what to do to get to the top. And now they're at the top and they say, "Where's my motivation now?"
Ah,
Isn't that fascinating?
it is.
I'm curious, in all your work, what did you find?
Gosh, that's a great question. Certainly, I'll answer that on two levels. One is when I worked with women
Hmm.
specifically. And I love the fact that you use the terms likability versus competence, because I'll never forget, I was interviewing this executive one time, and he said, "Could you smile?" And I thought, I know what his problem is. He wants me to be friendly while I'm asking him these professional questions. And I smiled because that was the only way to put him back at ease. And I continued on with the interview. And that's the kind of little cusp that you're working on, because as a man, you would ask those questions and they'd be, well, these are serious questions. Let's stay serious. So I think you really captured one piece that's very hard to change because it's so built into culture.
So built in.
Yeah. So that's one thing. Your point about executive having finally made it, that's an interesting question. The ones who continue to feel comfortable up there and motivated up there, that's the better word.
Yes, motivated.
Is when they recognize that there are other mountains to climb. They can envision other things to accomplish, because now they have not just themselves, they now have this whole base of competence and resources to move on. So the people who can continue to learn and push forward, those are the ones that continue to be okay.
I love how you phrase that. Like they've gotten to Mount Everest, but there are other things they can see from that height.
Correct.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Okay.
I think also they don't have the confidence. They've gotten to the top, and yet if an opportunity comes around, they go, well, I'm not there yet. Even though they're so confident, and they say men would never do that. If they got an opportunity, even if they didn't think they could do it, they'd say, yeah, I can do it.
Yeah.
So women do this very, very hard expectations. And truly, they've navigated things in a world where they haven't been the majority. And, that's been challenging, extremely challenging.
Yes. I remember the days, many days, when I was the only woman at the table.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit about that? That must have been amazingly challenging, like beyond, that was a Mount Everest.
That was a Mount Everest, no question. Well, I can picture it in my mind. There must have been 30 people around the table. It was a huge boardroom, and me. And I had to defend a particular staff member of mine because we were doing a riffing exercise at the moment. And I was not going to let this lovely, competent woman lose her position. And I knew it was going to happen, so I prepared very carefully, and I laid out my defense of her, and she kept the job.
So, oh my gosh, Madeline, what leadership you showed. Wow, that's inspiring.
Well, I'm curious about, this conversation, and as often happens on this show, takes a turn and goes in directions I hadn't intended. But
great. That's okay.
Exactly. I want to come back, though, because there's one area which I think is fascinating to me. I know that you use what's called neuroscience in your coaching. And I'm curious if you could just spend a couple minutes. What is this, and why does it make coaching so powerful?
Okay, wonderful. I think that the neuroscience, the neuroplasticity, that we can change. We have a perspective here. We can change. I think coaches, there's a kind of coaching called somatic coaching, which is uniquely using the wisdom of the body. So what are we feeling? So, it's not all cognitive. I think we have a brain in our little toe, in our little finger. What is the body telling us? Yeah. It's so, so powerful that we, the body knows before the cognitive mind is what the neuroscience tells us. So we work with that to help the person access all of them. So instead of it being one super highway, it's like 8 lanes. And are we helping the person access their full self so that they can be that second grade story? Can they be their best self and in turn help others? Because isn't that leadership? You demonstrated leadership when you defended that person that
Mhm.
you knew was good. And it wasn't hard. You said you had to do it with 30 people. You had to defend her oh my gosh.
Mhm.
And they were all men too.
Oh, yes.
Woo! I got to breathe on that. So I think we're creating new neural pathways. Now, I can I share a story with one senior woman executive that I had.
Sure.
She was a very, very gifted over planner, and she briefed one of the undersecretaries like a few times a week. That was one of her key things, to brief the undersecretary. And she would plan so much that when she went in, she was in the plan, but not in the moment. And she came to coaching for that. So again, it's how do you get someone to see all of them and use the body as an axis? So this is going to sound like a really crazy idea, but I asked her, tell me, like, what does a briefing look like? She told me a little bit. She says, I get stuck. I can't listen. I can't hear. And she was super bright, like super bright.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I said, I'm going to invite you to engage your body to be present. As a former yoga teacher, we always say the breath gets you in the present. You can't be in the breath before and the one over. You can only be present when you're in the present breath. So I said, I'll close my eyes, but I'd like you to tell me your briefing that you did yesterday. And I want you to sing it rather than speak it and move at the same time.
Wow.
Singing and moving at the same time. Well, she got embodied. And she found she did that every morning in the shower. And she was able to actually stay present because she was rehearsing it with a different part of the brain,
Oh,
the body brain. So for her, it worked. And she got over her thing of planning, because even if she practiced, she was practicing embodied. She was moving.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And neuroscience would say when you sing and move at the same time, it integrates the basal ganglia. So there's actually neuroscience to support that. So we
Lynn,
coaches have to stay curious and meet the client where they are.
Lynn, that is brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. Because when someone is very smart, they tend to rely a great deal on what's between the ears. Because
Exactly.
they see that as their greatest strengths,
Right.
when in fact they're gifted with a whole body that helps them do that.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so beautifully said.
That's lovely.
Madeline, you are such a great listener.
Thank
I
you.
bet you've coached a lot of people.
A few.
You're modest. A few thousand.
I don't know about that. Well, oh goodness. There's another aspect to coaching which was kind of hinted at in when I was describing you at the beginning, introducing you at the beginning. You talked about peer learning, and oftentimes we talk about peer coaching. I wonder if you talk about that particular aspect. I have some thoughts on it too, but I want to hear yours.
Sure, great. So after I'd done one-on-one coaching for a while at the Treasury Executive Institute, I actually pioneered peer coaching. We can call it peer learning, because it was a way for people to create support with one another. So peer coaching is, I need support for a challenge or an opportunity, and everyone learns how to ask the powerful questions, to be non-judgmental, to be curious. And it's a wonderful way for people to gain new perspectives, because when other people ask questions, they may be questions you never thought of.
That's right.
Yeah. So I find peer coaching to be extremely, extremely powerful, because it's like instead of one brain, you've got 6 other brains. The research shows maybe 6 to 8 people in a peer coaching or peer learning environment is very effective.
6 to 8.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love that, because you
Mm-hmm.
really can get to know 6 to 8 people well.
Mm-hmm. And it never ceases to amaze me, Madeline, that people who do this become friends or connections for life.
Yes.
When
Yes.
you feel that heard and that supported,
Yeah.
you feel, wow.
As you were talking about that, I thought to myself, one of the characteristics uh, of highly resilient people is that they have social support. There
Mm.
are people around them that believe in them, that encourage them and support them. And this peer coaching, you're actually creating the opportunity for people to really nurture their resilience as well as their
Yes.
capacity.
Yes, and this is one of your expertises, the
Mm,
whole thing about resilience. I'm so glad you said that. It's a way to nurture resilience.
mhm. Right
Mhm,
in there. And on top of that, there's this enormous learning that goes on because you're hearing from different perspectives. And your,
mhm,
your point about asking a different question
mhm,
than the one that was unexpected
mhm.
because it comes from the operations side instead of the finance side,
Right.
it really makes you suddenly see things
Mhm.
that are much richer than what the initial thought was.
It makes me think, Madeline, of, an orchestra of different instruments.
Mhm.
The flutes never sound like the trombones, nor should they. So in peer coaching, it's like you have different instruments, different
Yeah,
sounds, but
yeah.
together they create a great symphony, great music.
Yes. Yes. And to be a really good player in an orchestra, you have to be listening on every
Yes. Yes. You have to listen to your own notes and the notes of everyone else.
on
And of
everyone.
course,
Yes.
one bad note makes the whole orchestra sound bad. So people care
Yeah.
about other people being their best. Second grade.
Second grade. I love it.
It
You know,
makes me think,
you, I'm sitting here thinking, I think I'm going to go back and think through some of my early grades and what I was
oh,
doing in
wonderful.
those times. You never know what story will pop up because the events in our lives, those stories of those events, they really are what formed us.
Yes.
And revisiting them is just so much. It can be so much fun. It can also be a little terrifying at times
Mhm.
when you discover something that you really wished hadn't happened. But hey,
Mhm.
you got through it.
Yeah. Your
Something happened.
resilience, you got
That's right.
through it.
That's right.
Mhm. Mhm.
Ah, well, this has been so interesting, but there are a couple areas I want to touch on before we close. What are some ways that you've engaged clients that have actually, in the process, transformed you?
Oh, wow. That's a great question, Madeline. Um, Something comes to my mind right away. I was a new coach, relatively new coach, and somebody, a male high executive, came to me from a department, a major department, and he was so distraught and so angry and so depressed about what was happening, about the issue, that I actually, Madeline, said, wow, this is too much for me. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most emotion, it was 300.
Ooh,
And I don't feel that I have issues with strong emotions. I'm not afraid of them, but this was too much.
mm,
And I heard a little voice in my head. You can think I'm crazy, but I did. And it said, take him. And I listened. Again, that's a somatic. Somatic is hearing your
yeah,
what's going on, your sensations. And he actually transformed from being distraught, depressed, felt like a failure, to triumphing, being a triumph of this situation. And it transformed me because I had been afraid and I met the challenge. And
yeah,
so, as a coach, I met the challenge and my client met the challenge. So, it
mm,
was a win win, which
yeah,
is another theme that means so much to me with it makes me think of a story when I was in the orchestra. Um, Second grade was about win-win. How do you help people be their best and help everyone be their best? And in the orchestra, the conductor was very upset one day because we were all talking and he couldn't concentrate. He hit the baton on the stand. He said, "Okay, I've had it. I'm going to write your mothers, and you're all going to be kicked out of the orchestra." Dead silence. He said, "If the next day you come back, you're talking when I'm working with the flutes and the trombones are talking, um, you all just won't be in the orchestra anymore." So I went home, got the Helen Keller book out, taught everybody sign language. And the next day we met, the conductor cried, Madeline. He said, "I don't know what's gotten into you, but I'm so grateful." So he got what he needed and we got to talk. So I think great organizations know how to create win-win, and that's
Yeah,
the power of coaching.
that's the power of coaching. Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, I always like to help my audience help themselves.
Mhm.
So there's a couple of thoughts in my mind that I'm curious about.
Mhm.
One is, from your perspective,
Mhm.
what's the ideal client look like? What's their mindset?
Oh, what a
And then
great question.
and then I want to flip it. So I'm going to tell you both questions because I know it's where there are two different answers here. I want to flip it and say, how does a person know it's time for me to find a coach?
What a great question. Okay, so the what makes a great client is curiosity, um, being open, getting
Mhm.
comfortable with being not comfortable, being able to go to those places
Mm,
that are hard,
mm,
and wanting some kind of change or wanting to celebrate an opportunity. So I say coaching takes you from where you are to where you want to be or helps you discover where you want to be. So curiosity is like key for both the coach and the client.
mm.
And I always say children make the best coaches because they ask great
Yeah,
questions and they're always
mhm.
curious
Yeah,
and they're not afraid to be wrong.
right.
Yeah. And so tell me the second part of that again. I got so involved in
Oh,
thinking
I
about the
love it.
second.
I love it. I rarely do I give the two questions, but I wanted you to see that there were two
Mhm.
perspectives on it. But before I go to that, I want to say that I think you've been reading my book. I hear some familiar phrases.
Yes, yes.
The idea of being comfortable in discomfort. Oh,
Mhm,
so, so powerful when you finally discover that you have the capacity to do that.
mhm.
Okay, this second question was, how does a person recognize, hey,
Mm,
it's time for me to call a coach?
that is such a powerful question. Usually it's a challenge, something that they want to be different than it is. Communication with people. It could be a difficult boss.
Mhm.
Um, Wanting to feel more of who they are at their best
Mm,
and feeling obstacles to that. Or it could be, I want to take advantage of feeling even greater than I feel. I want to be able to handle this opportunity. So it's wanting to have some kind of a change and feeling more embodied with the best self. I don't know. What do you think about that, Madeline, since with your good writing about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and resilience, what do you think?
the idea of the challenge, that's an easy, that's an
Mhm.
easy reason to say, okay, this is this challenge. I can't, I'm tired. If I could just get, you know, 7 hours of sleep at
Mhm.
night, I would have the energy to
Mhm.
solve it, but I can't.
Mhm.
That's the easy one. The other one is, am I where I really want to be? Am I
I love that.
where I know I should be? Am I
Ah,
where I was created to be?
ah,
Then you could
yeah.
tap into that, and then it would just be automatic.
Mhm.
Okay, I've gone as far as I can with my knowledge. It's not
Mhm.
that I haven't gone as far as I can. I've gone with as far as I can with what I know. Now I need to
Mhm.
have somebody help me see more, learn more.
Mhm. I love that. It's this. Mhm.
Mhm.
Can I see more?
Yeah.
And I love what you said because it's really about coaching the person, not the problem.
Yes.
Am I being all that I wanna be?
Yeah.
What am I being called to be?
What am I being called to be? Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my guests, her name is Diana Whitney. Wonderful, wonderful person. Uh, I had her on the show one time, and I asked her um, about you know careers and that sort of thing, and her answer was, it's really about a calling, and she
Mm,
defined the calling as the intersection of your greatest strengths and the
mm.
world's greatest needs.
I love that.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful.
Mhm. She's just that kind of person. Well, Lynn, I am just filled to the brim with delight in terms of what we covered today. I think if people don't have a better appreciation for coaching, they weren't listening.
Mhm.
But I know that I also want to give you a moment to, final words to
Oh,
our
thank
audience.
you. Well, of course, I want to go back to second grade because Mrs. Matthews actually did not fully listen and hear my story. So I think that, that song, I'd like to teach the world to sing.
Yeah.
I'd like to teach the world to be coached and to
Mm,
coach,
mm,
because with those kind of conversations, the world will be in a better place.
yeah.
Can we listen and can we help people to be their best? So that's really my passion. Could I teach second graders, sixth graders, so that when they get older, they not only know how to coach, but they know how to be coached.
Mm,
So can you imagine if Mrs. Matthews had known how to coach and had allowed me, the second grader, to coach her? Can
mhm.
you imagine? Can you imagine if presidents allowed themselves to be coached? Can you imagine what the world would be like if those kind of conversations of peer learning, people got together and solved the problems? And also women, I think women have a very unique place to play with leadership and the world's problems. And if we can release what I call feminine leadership, I think the statistics show we have a better world.
Mm.
And how do we do that? We do it through conversation. And I'd love to see the world be able to be in that place. And Madeline, you've been such a pioneer with that.
Oh,
I mean, and look what you're doing now to
mm,
create conversations and deep learning.
yeah. Thank you. And thank you for all your gifts today. But be sure how to tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Lynne Feingold, that's LYNNE FEINGOLD 01 @gmail.com.
Great. Lynn, thank you so much for your time, your expertise, your
Thank you,
passion.
Madeline.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madeline.
Okay, it's now time for Grounds for Thought. When I was designing my approach for helping individuals nurture their resilience, I always recommend that they begin by exploring the stories of their own lives. It's a powerful practice that helps many, many individuals. Moreover, it's an exercise that can be done every day, every day for a lifetime, and you'll still see new aspects of the things that formed you into who you are today. I sometimes call it looking in a mirror. When I encountered the book, Inner Excavation, Explore Yourself Through Photography, Poetry, and Mixed Media, looking something like this. Let me see if I can get it straight. There it is. Lovely book. I was really delighted when I found this book. She says in the very beginning of the book, we explore this inner journey through 3 mediums: photography, poetry, and mixed media. What struck me was that this was the same exercise that allows the exploration to be done of our events of our lives, but to do it without words. If you're doing photography, no words to this. It's just an image. It's a really great way for someone who struggles with words or hates writing. No words are involved. But in addition, the book offers ideas on what to look for. For example, one time I was in a meeting with 2 other people, and we were just doing some fun photography. And we took a picture of our feet under the table. Now, it happened to be summertime, and so we were all in sandals. And when I looked at the image afterwards, there they were, all of our 10 toes, well, between the three of us, 30 toes, all facing the center. Like we were all moving toward the same goal. It was a wonderful image and gave us such terrific insight from just a simple picture taken for fun. Now, on the other hand, if a person chooses poetry, the words are actually coming in a way from a different part of our brain because we have to think image, we have to think how to, if you want to rhyme. But what I use when I'm working with students is I get them to write a haiku poem. Now, in English, a haiku poem is 5 syllables. The second line is 7 syllables. Third line is 5 syllables. It's amazing what you can say in just those 3 lines. The key here is that it's very short, and we feel more comfortable tackling something new that is short. It's not going to take too long. We'll feel uncomfortable for just a minute or two. The amazing thing is that the poems sometimes captured very, very deep thoughts, and with such brevity. So here was a book that allowed me to explore who I am using my camera and my creative brain. Here is an example of one of the exercises. Now, this is the other thing about the book. It has exercises all through it of how just to help you to do these exercises. So here is one. She says, let's continue to explore how a photo can be an intriguing, thought-provoking answer to a question. The task is answer the following questions in photos. What color is your morning? What are the shapes of your day? What are the smells of your evening? You notice none of them are what is it that you see. Now, that list, by the way, goes on to lots of other things that you can possibly think about. The key is the notes are then followed by the suggestion that the photo shoot can be done over a whole month, even just looking at one question. I think this is a fascinating way to think about who you are. What I noticed was that to do this, you have to be aware of every moment. You have to be observant of your surroundings, and you have to be in the moment. Now, last week we talked with Gamini Hawasam, and I thought, what a perfect additional piece of why that aspect of reflection during that mindfulness is so important. So this is the grounds for thought. This book, Inner Excavation. Explore yourself through photography, poetry, and mixed media by Liz Lamoureux. I hope you've gotten some ideas from our show today, and if you did, post them in social media and even note what you might do differently as a result. I'm Madeline Blair, wishing you infinite possibilities as you make your choices in life with resilience.